What's up, Call of Duty fans? Welcome back to Checkmate Gaming on my Hold Shift, and in this edition of the breakdown, we're taking a look at another late-game heroic moment from OpTic Gaming LA as they were playing up against the Florida Mutineers on Rammaza on day number 2 of the London Royal Ravens home series. OpTic was in a tight spot going through our second rotation of hills where Florida put on one of the most beautiful holds of P3 and would put them at a 230-plus point mark. Leaving OpTic Gaming just around 160, they would have to find a way to have a perfect back half of the second rotation for hills, and they would do just that. Take a look. So before we really dig into the play, let's get the lay of the land. You're currently looking at a 176 to 160, and for colors, I'm going to do Florida in the red or the pink, and I'm going to do OpTic in the blue, just to give you guys a heads up as far as the colors in the minimap, since I can't really do the two different types of green. So you're looking at a 16-point lead for the Florida Mutineers. The problem coming over for OpTic is the fact that you're sitting on the old hill, and you have to find a way to try to contest the early time of P3. And that's not necessarily the problem as much as Florida's setup, in which they're going to have a really nice defensive hold where you've got one player top rug, one player top cafe, and then one player over at the BS&D while one just soaks up time. The beauty about this hold for the Mutineers is depending on where you spawn, if you spawn up this way, you should know that a hit is trying to come through the top side of rug. If you spawn over this way, you should know that a hit is probably trying to come through BS&D. So they're able to kind of reinforce depending on where the spawns are going to be at for this next upcoming approach. And because this defensive line is drawn well beyond the 50-yard line, OpTic spawns are going to be all the way in the back. It provides for a very difficult situation to say, where are we going to go? Are we going to try to hit the back side of dark? Are we going to try to push through the top side of rug? You'll see pretty quickly neither of those are going to unfold, and they'll actually find some success to get to the bottom of cafe. But the problem is they never take the top side of cafe, so there's never a chance for them to shoot down at this hard point or put in a spawn trap sooner rather than later. So as this starts to unfold, Pharaoh is able to find 2 big kills over by the BS&D. He's able to essentially lock down the entire south part of the map by himself, and as soon as this next kill comes in on Draza, you're going to start to see that this play for Florida is to get right back into the cafe if possible. Try to continue to zone off this OpTic Gaming squad who's having a really tough time getting through. Pharaoh goes on 4 in a row, again just dominating the southern part of the map, and then as soon as the spawns come up for the side of Florida, they start to make their push over to get into the cafe, and this is where everything goes wrong for the side of OpTic. You got 30 seconds left on the clock. You're putting yourself in a position to where, yep, you've gotten into the top side of rug, which is good news, and you've got 3 members that are around the cafe, which you think is good news, but look at where they're positioned over this overhead. You've got Quavo down low, Slasher down low, and Hollow down low, and TJ with an SMG, I believe, is also either down low or up top. It's kind of hard to tell off this. I think he's actually might be up top. Regardless of the situation, the problem is when you start to flood through the bottom side of this cafe and you don't have anybody over the top watching you make this play, is it leaves for really free lines of sight. Awakening is in a corner. He's got a good opportunity. Skies could just poke a window. You've got Havoc who's on the side by the door. He can also watch the crossfire. And you still have on the bottom part of your minimap, Pharaoh, who's on the bottom side of this, sitting here saying, well, I'm getting challenged by 1, so everything has to come from the front. So for Florida, they don't even have to worry about this until Pharaoh drops. And everything kind of goes awry right here for the side of OpTic, and it puts them in an absolutely terrible spot. Hollow drops, Quavo drops, TJ drops, and now you've got 20 seconds in which you really are not going to get an opportunity to challenge this if you're OpTic. So what you're going to see is a 235 to 162, which will force OpTic to essentially have to play perfect coming up. And the good news is they do. They get themselves forward, they control the rug, they put players over by cafe, and they essentially do exactly to Florida what they just did to them, where they're going to be setting up positions to where you're defending this, and yes, you have Pharaoh who's trying to sneak through after he won his gunfight before, but he's going to be traded away as Quavo still is responsible for the middle of the map, and when you put the defensive line right here, there's really only 2 things that Florida can do. Number 1, you try to overwhelm the backside of dirt. Number 2, you just take a long rotation around the back. What essentially will happen is Florida will get together right in this space. They're going to start to make the push happen through dark, and as soon as that's read by OpTic, you'll have members coming off spawn that help deal with it. It's a really, really beautiful setup, and we'll watch that all unfold. So here's that setup again right by the rug. Pharaoh's going to find one, but then to be immediately traded. And watch how OpTic spread the map here. They're trying to get over to the middle of the map. Set up this defensive line at all costs. Do what you can to zone Florida away. And they do a great job at doing that. Of course, it helps when you're winning a couple of great individual gunfights like that one from Hollow and this one as well from Slasher. But the better news for the side of OpTic is because you've got these members that are up front, the members that are in the hill themselves can essentially play around with the first and second floors depending on when they're needed.
On OpTic again, they lost on Rammaza to this team yesterday. It is a
Here's Florida's group up. Here comes that hit that we labeled out where they're going to start to make the play through the backside of this dirt area. TJ is going to read this as he's the one currently sitting top second. He's going to make sure nobody pushes through bridge and then immediately wrap behind and flank. But everybody from OpTic is looking at this mostly because Kenny, who found this trade before, is realizing, hey, nobody's over the middle of the map. It has to be a one-dimensional hit from the backside.
Here on map number 1 again.
TJ stays alive. He's able to win a really big gunfight. If he loses that versus Skies, maybe there's an opportunity for Florida to get in. But Quavo comes to help out, and then TJ is able to clean things up. 30 seconds left on the hill. And it's going to be the number 8 of Slasher, who has realized off of his spawn that he doesn't need to be here anymore. His teammates just convincingly won this fight. It's a 4-man feed, about to be number 5 as soon as Skies falls. And Slasher can actually make a potential push through. He's got options here. He can play inside a cafe. He can try to play through ruins. He makes the right play by trying to exist inside this cafe for as long as possible. This is the entire pivot point of this rotation from the 4th hard point to the 5th. You want to have the cafe controlled. It gives you the opportunity to come in one of 2 directions for the side of OpTic, or really one of 3. Number 1, as you exit right through Rug Shop, you've got good defensive help from the top side of Cafe to help you out on that rotation. The second is you just come right through and help out by getting into Cafe yourselves. That's also a good option. It's also relatively safe. And then the third option is just to wrap right back through Vines and get your way through BS and D to hit this. You'll see a little bit of everything occurring for OpTic because they can afford to. They're trying to push everything out and essentially put Florida into a spawn trap to where they are only going to be spawning in this part of the map. And when you've got top control of Cafe, you've got a nice long angle to watch those rotations come off of spawn, and it gives your team, again, an opportunity to hit from the back and reinforce, or potentially pinch from the side if absolutely needed. This is a great rotation coming out of Slasher. It might be a little bit early in some people's minds, but he's able to get away with this because they get a 5-man feed, and Awakening is the only player really worth worrying about as he took down Slasher, and as Kenny was trying to push through, now you've got a bit of a lay of the land. So the cafe play doesn't really come through like they wanted to. But you're still going to see a pretty solid exit because you're going to get good pressure from these two making a play to get over to this 5th hard point quickly. Florida's not quite able to hold on. Awakening gives up the angle maybe a touch too soon. He loses one of his teammates, goes to try to challenge, and he's going to be picked apart from the top side as TJ is going to give this call out. He tags it up, and Quavo comes from behind, gets the trade. So even though Slasher doesn't necessarily win, he gets a lot of information, and OpTic's able to follow up and get themselves into the top side of Cafe, while also getting a couple of spawns that allow them to hit from the backside of the BS and D site. So now you've got an opportunity for OpTic to essentially hit from the front for this hill. You've got good control up top. You're going to see TJ will eventually take this position right here off of his respawn, and he will put himself to watch the rotations from the Florida Mutineers from the back. They're never able to hit from the side or try to challenge the cafe. Everything will have to come from the backside, of which OpTic has got an AR here, and they'll have 2 members that are going to win things out over here in the dark alley behind these arches. It's a really good setup. As TJ again wins that gunfight, he's going to get a little bit of help. Here comes the first hit from the front. Havoc's going to get traded, and now you have that setup where you've got big numbers for OpTic on the bottom side of dark. You've got players up here, and then as soon as they clear up this fight in the back for Cafe, it's TJ who takes this mantle, and he's going to watch players rotating in. It just comes down to, can you win your gunfights in the hill itself? And they're able to do just that. Hollow and Draza able to stay alive. They're going to win the gunfights, and now it puts another weird situation for Florida. OpTic all of a sudden at 215 to just the 239 of the Florida Mutineers. And you can see the rotation. Florida's sitting here saying that this is not going well for us. We have to rotate through Rug, open up some space, and that's exactly what they do. It's a bad situation for them to be in, but they're making the best out of it. The problem that ends up happening is that they realize that as soon as they get top rug and they get themselves set up in what will essentially be these two positions, there is still a lot of time on the hard point. And the next set of spawns that come through, players are starting to hit this angle to try to hit the hill one more time. After a couple of gunfights are actually won from Florida, I think they make the call that, hey, we can actually just win the game on P5, and it opens up a really massive spawn flip in favor of OpTic Gaming. You'll see it happen here in a moment. OpTic realize, okay, we've got to make sure we don't let them get the early rotation, but as these three gunfights come through, here's the bad side spawn flip for the side of the Florida Mutineers. Because they still had a player top construction who's trying to lock things down for new, and because everybody started to re-hit back over to this side of the map, it actually opens up space once the trades come in for the side of OpTic to where they will spawn up here. It's going to give them an opportunity to challenge for long enough so that way Florida cannot win this area, but they also get rug control. This is another moment where the Florida Mutineers could have put the game away, but did not make a decision on what they wanted to do. They could have just held these two spots, give OpTic that time, and secure the high ground to win the game with 11 seconds on the first hard point. They second-guess themselves, they get a couple of kills, which helps lead to that second guessing, and they try to make their play right through the middle of the map, which leads to this massive spawn flip in favor of OpTic Gaming. Here comes the focus for OpTic as they try to make their way over to rug, and they get themselves right back on top of rug for, just like Miles is saying, it's going to be a 50-50 fight over the middle of the map. Who's going to win the high ground battle? Who's going to be able to get enough pressure to put themselves in a position to win the map on P1? So the big news here for OpTic is not only did they win a couple of gunfights, they also throw a little bit of pressure over towards the construction site. That's going to do really, really well to make sure that Florida never fully gets onto the hard point. You also see Pharaoh trying to do the exact same thing. He puts himself on the cafe, and as soon as he dealt with, OpTic is going to start to make all of their pressure felt right through the middle side of the map. And there's the play on the bottom side. You're able to free up one player while everyone else just reinforces. Florida can't fully touch the hill, and from here it just comes down to, can Florida win their gunfights? There's the pinch from the back. The spawns come out. Nobody can touch in time, and OpTic have a last-minute save with a perfect rotation from 3 to 4 to 5, right back to P1. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. I really do. It's a really fun one for me. I hope that it leads to some extra insight as far as why certain things are occurring and where some of the beauty of this game actually does lie. And for OpTic Gaming LA, why as a fan, you might actually be really happy about what you were able to see previous weekend from London, and why your hopes going forward should actually be pretty high about the potential of this squad. This is no easy feat to pull off what we just saw, and OpTic Gaming made an absolute clinic out of it. So again, we'll be looking forward to the Toronto home series to finish things off. Recaps daily here on the CMG YouTube. And until next time, hope you guys keep holding it down. So long.